It's probably time to start asking some questions.
Shall we begin the grillening?
I think so.
Grillening.
Real word, grillening.
I'm around now.
Right, come on then. Cat,
Hi.
what's the first book you remember reading and enjoying?
Oh, please don't laugh at me. But it was Colin Dan's The Animals of Farthingwood.
There is nothing wrong with that.
I wouldn't laugh at Farthingwood.
I mean, that shit gets dark, let me tell you. Animals just die a lot. Yeah, but I definitely, talking animals were my introduction to fantasy, really, as a kid.
Are we about to hear anything about certain colours and structures? Perhaps
No.
red walls or
No, in fact, I never enjoyed the Red Wall books. Sorry, I did try. I loved William Howard, Dunton Chronicles, Dunton Wood, all that. Dunton Stone, can't remember. I enjoyed his work. And there were a lot of other talking animal book. Tad Williams. Is it?
Oh, that rings a bell.
Yeah. But yeah, Red Wall I could never get into. It's just one of those things that just never worked for me.
Where do you land on Animorphs? They're sometimes talking animals.
I've never read Animorphs. Is a book series?
Let me tell you, you're missing out.
They also made a really awful TV show of it as well, I think.
They did.
Which I haven't seen. Sorry, that's clearly something that skipped my country.
Well, if you ever
maybe it didn't.
Truly awful CGI, then feel free to pick it up.
Yay.
Somehow.
Oh, I mean, Watership Down. I've left out Watership Down, obviously, but yeah. And as a teenager, well, young teenager, like not preteen, let's say, Diana Wynne Jones, Dog's Body was. I just remember. I mean, I still list Dog's Body as one of the reasons I'm a writer.
One author.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely.
So, so were you reading these books in South Africa? Was this before you moved?
Yeah. I only moved here like 6 years ago.
Oh, fair enough. Right. Okay. Is there a sort of a predominant literary culture in South Africa? Is there like
Oh, you're asking a bad question there. There, when I was young, obviously it was different because it was apartheid. So most of our literary canon that we had in the library, which is obviously where I got all my books, would be mainly English and American authors, generally white authors.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's changed dramatically. We'll still obviously get the big international names, but South Africa has its own literary culture, its own literary greats within the country that don't really have a name outside.
Right. And is that something that's been like focused on in terms of being to grow it and identify the people that could be?
Well, I mean, yeah, because obviously you've got to you've got to get rid of the cringe, as it were, and support well, I mean, that's what people do is they sort of go, oh, it's local, it must be terrible, which is not true at all. So
that's an interesting interesting idea, isn't it? This get rid of the cringe, because there is this concept that if it's from someone like, for example, I grew up in Cumbria for a while, and there's this idea that if there's like a local Cumbrian author or something, then it must somehow be like bumpkiny and bad.
And it's a terrible, terrible way to view your own writers, like, and your own creatives. Yeah.
I think so.
So there is definitely a push towards going, listen, we're actually good. Stop sticking us in like a little special African literature shelf and take us to the whole world, which hopefully eventually one day we'll see more.
Just because it interests me, do you speak Afrikaans?
I can speak it incredibly badly.
Okay.
And I can understand it. So often I have a good friend who she'll just speak Afrikaans to me and I'll speak English to her.
Oh wow, cool.
So we'll have a conversation like that, because I don't think anyone can tolerate me destroying their language the way I can. So, but I can understand it. Yeah.
Okay, so I was really interested to know if you've read anything that's in Afrikaans and if that has like a different.
Oh yeah, because I mean you have to in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kring and the Boss and Phyllis Kint are the two big ones that I read, which have been translated into English. So Deline Mathieu is the South African author who wrote those. They're so famous in South Africa that I know they have international English versions.
Yeah.
So
just heading back to the animals and these sort of anthropomorphized animals.
Yeah.
It's sort of quite interesting when people list that as their first like real enjoyment of reading and potentially the stuff that gets them into writing, because I strongly feel like that is a wonderful way to promote empathy in children. Is to put sort of people stories into animals, if that makes sense.
It's essentially introductory fantasy.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly where I was going. Yeah, so we end up with all of a sudden a massive reading community that has pretty similar origin roots in terms of where they started, and then, funnily enough, they all like reading Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Well, if I look at my own kids, they loved what are these cat books called?
Oh, I know exactly the ones you mean.
There's like 1,000 of them, and they're like
Yeah.
And I mean, our cats even got named after cats in these books.
They're
Anyway,
things like warrior, aren't they?
Yeah, with the warrior cats,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Well done. So there's like 1,000 of those books, and they just bought them like in massive things and just read them all in one go. So, and now of course they're into fantasy. So,
Wonderful.
I say, Ben, all roads lead to Gaspode the Wonder Dog. That's
there we go.
Right.
I've got a Gaspode. He's wandering around.
Oh, have you?
No, his name's not Gas. His name is Snufkin, but
he looks like a type, isn't he?
Yeah. Heinz 57.
I want to own a mangy little dog and call him Gaspode, a dog that can only be identified breed-wise as dog. That is.
Yeah. Yep. This is exactly what this dog is. We should have called him Gaspode in retrospect.
Right. Let's ask you another question.
Go for it.
What gives you satisfaction while you are writing?
Words that flow nicely.
Ooh.
I like getting in that flow and the words just come and they sound like poetry when you're writing them. I mean, you still have to edit them, obviously, because they're not poetry afterwards. But when the words just kind of like waves just come crashing down.
Like waves is a really interesting way to sort of describe that. So does it come in like just like a single flood and then another one a few minutes later and then another one? Is that the process?
No. I just I have to fit writing in little bits and pieces like most of us do.
Yeah.
So I tend to set a timer for like 20 minutes and see how much I can get down. So that's a long way. But no, I mean like when you're actually writing and the words just like the brain isn't functioning. There's just like a direct download from the ether or something.
So yeah, just like a lightning rod on the end of your pencil sort of thing.
Yeah, the muse.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's you kind of your flow rather than the words flow, or is it sort of somewhere in the middle?
Oh, it's both because it's the flow of like just creative juices, as it were. We could put that there with moist and puce.
Puce
creative juices.
The puce creative juices were moist. Yeah. All right. Now that I've sufficiently grossed everyone out.
If your juices are running puce, please see your doctor.
There's no hope. Gives new meaning to the words purple prose.
No.
I shouldn't have gone there. I don't even know what I was saying anymore. No, I was just saying what the words must also flow. The words must, on the page, have a shape to them, a flow to them, and that makes me happy.
Yes, as it should make you happy. This idea of having that like shape on the page, I think that's something that I can connect to. I think I felt that a few times, and then then you've got the other times, haven't you, where it's just not quite there.
More like it's less a wave and more like a sewer leak.
Yeah, or like maybe like a landslide. There's just like a jumble of words down the bottom in a mess, and you've got to try and pick them up and turn them back into a mountain.
I used to say word vomit, and then what you do afterwards is you go and you pick out the carrots.
Oh,
lovely. I'm loving this like gross out description thing that we're doing this episode.
Yeah,
I'm really enjoying
it. Do either of you ever get the thing where you feel like your brain is holding exactly the scene that you want to write down, but it's sort of holding it going nah, 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 and not letting you quite get a hold of it. Because I'm finding that a lot recently. Like, I can really picture it, but I can't seem to make the correct words for it pour out of the end of my fingers.
I think this is potentially where because we often come at these things from two different angles. I very rarely see very clear images of scenes when I'm.
Oh, thank God, it's not just me.
Yeah, most of my stuff is like emotion and like knowing like story structure and how things like might pull and twist. And then you sort of arrive at a scene. You're like, "Fuck, that was a good scene," and then you can see all the images and stuff because you sort of it all colors in almost. But I do have, occasionally everyone gets that little bit of problem where you can sort of feel how a scene should be going.
Yeah.
But it's not quite going there, and your characters are talking to each other in quite a wooden way. But
yeah, but that's first draft nonsense. Just come back and fix that.
It's and in fact, it is often so easy to come back and fix it. You just wonder, you wonder why you spent 10 minutes agonizing about how shit of a writer you were.
Every first draft is shit.
Yeah, but I mean,
and the ones who say it not, they're lying.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. But I have quite interesting thing because I don't visualize at all. I don't see images. Like if I close my eyes and you ask me to picture an apple, I'm not going to be able to. So when I write, I just make words. Like there's no image, there's no visualization. I don't even know what the scene's gonna do. I just write, and I've learnt to trust my underbrain.
Ooh, I like that.
Underbrain. That is good.
It knows what it's doing. I don't, but the underbrain does.
I like that a lot, actually. Trust your underbrain.
Yeah, that's great. Especially when your underbrain is throwing up random things. You're like, this makes no sense. You're like, just trust, just keep writing. Eventually, it makes sense. And at the end of the story, you're like, oh, that's why that was there.
You get surprised by your own twist. I love that.
Yep, exactly.
Right, go on. Hard question time. Hard question.
Okay.
What is your favorite novel
of all time? That's not hard.
Only the time we live in. But go on.
That's not hard. Go on.
No, it's Clive Barker's Imagica.
Clive Barker's Imagica. I'm not familiar with this. I have read something by Clive Barker, but it was like a comic book, graphic novel.
Oh,
so
okay.
I haven't read this. So this is a novel.
I'm actually I'm actually came to Clive Barker not through his horror, but through his fantasy. So I'm not really very familiar with his horror, and obviously most people know him as a horror writer.
Yes.
But the first Clive Barker I read was Weave World, which I absolutely adored. And then I read The Great and Secret Show, and then I read Imagica. And Imagica is basically like, if I could do that, I would be happy.
So what's contained within Imagica that really captures you?
I don't know. I think he just does this kind of fantasy that is so dreamlike and surreal, but also set in our world, but also horrific. So he just combines all these things that I just really like.
The kind of like alt real world thing.
Yeah, it's real world. It's. I mean but like Imagica in particular has got all these other worlds that our world is shut off from. It used to be connected to, and the whole point of the novel is reconnecting them all. But yeah, it's just I don't know how to explain it. It's like reading a tarot card basically, except like a whole deck of tarot cards just randomly shuffled, thrown on the ground, and now there's a plot. And you're like, yeah, this works.
He's really exceptionally good at that kind of world behind the veil from our
yeah. Oh, he does that so much. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Massive Hellraiser fan.
I have never seen Hellraiser.
Oh, you should.
I know.
Watch the second one. That's the best one, because you get a lot of that kind of glimpse into Barker's version of hell, and it's not the great fiery pits. It's just this surreal kind of labyrinth.
Yeah, he does surreal so well.
Strange things. It's fantastic.
Yeah, as a fantasist, I really enjoy him. I've read some of his horror later, and I wasn't as into it, but maybe it was just the time period that I was reading it. So I might go back to it at some point.
My first experience of Clive Barker actually was a PC game called Alpha Centauri. So it was
I know that game.
Thing. Yeah.
Very vague. That was okay. I didn't realize that Clive Barker was
Clive Barker's Alpha
And had the
Centauri?
eyeball. There was like a green eyeball thing? Or is it something else?
Possibly. I don't know. Maybe.
I've not played this. So what kind of game is it?
It's a base builder thing,
Ah,
but with
Oh no, maybe it's something else
absolutely,
I'm thinking of. Sorry.
absolutely loads of lore dumps in it,
Okay, I
which I'm
might
assuming is why they
might
got.
beat me up.
and this is Clive Barker,
Pretty
Yeah.
sure.
not Sid Meier.
Oh, maybe. I
Potential.
had two games when I was a kid. One of them was by Sid Meier, and one of them was by Clive Barker. Maybe it was a werewolf one by Clive. That would make more sense. It's definitely. I definitely had a Clive Barker PC game when I was a kid. I'm going to find out what it was called.
Yeah,
That's-
look
Hold the line, please, operator.
The Sims by Clive Barker. The most fucked up game you can come across.
I think it was called
So-
Undying.
Undying. Okay, we're getting
That
there.
sounds possible. Yeah, that sounds more.
That may be it. Maybe it appears I had conflated two things in my child brain.
That never happens to me.
And I'm just now imagining what Sid Meier's version of Hellraiser would look like.
Be really slow.
Just Gandhi dropping the nukes constantly.
Takes like 17 hours to open the puzzle cube.
Yeah. No, that's a different dude again.
No, the puzzle cube is a Hellraiser thing.
It's yeah. It's
Oh,
not,
sorry. I
it's
thought,
Clive
I thought you were
Barker.
talking about the Peter Molyneux, the developer who brought out that cube thing that people could they had to pay to hit it,
Look,
and after a certain amount of clicks, it would like unravel.
I feel like
What?
I've moved into a parallel universe. I don't know what's
We're
going
now
on
in a
anymore.
Clive Barker novel.
Perhaps
Right,
we are.
This is derailed so hard.
It's so heavy. We've gone Sid Meier's, Peter Molyneux, back to Clive Barker. So the only thing that I've read by Clive Barker is called The Age of Desire, and I would definitely say that he appeared to be a master of creating this kind of like departure from reality with very strong emotion, like emotive tones to it. Because that whole story is about a dude who like his libido basically goes into hyperdrive.
That sounds very Clive Barker.
Yeah, right. So and it's actually really disturbing just watching this person, like everything about their morality just implode because of this this base desire that they cannot control.
Yeah, I can see it.
It was strong stuff, especially because it's like an illustrated graphic novel as well. So
Yeah, he is also a visual artist. I don't know if he did art for that, but
I
he is
don't
also
know.
a visual artist.
I'd have to dig it off my shelf and find out potentially.
Man's done everything. I mean, I want that career. I want to have done visual art. You know, me. Actually, no, I don't care about movies. But you know, like just being able to go like, yeah, I'm going to do this now and just do it. I love that.
He's done everything, including moonlighting as Sid Meier in order to make Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. Right. Do you listen to music while you're writing? And if you do,
I do, yeah.
what's your genre of preference?
It depends on what I'm writing. But I actually quite like a lot of really, really modern electro pop music that I discover via YouTube. Please don't judge me. So, but other than that, it'll be music from the 90s. So it's either from the 90s or it's from like yesterday on TikTok.
So it's definitely tied to the themes of what you're writing rather than you have like a set playlist that gets you pumped for writing and that.
Nah, and also I can write while music's playing with lyrics and stuff. I know some people have a problem with that. They don't like. They prefer to have like movie sort of scores and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I definitely can't.
I don't. Yeah.
But that's interesting. That just two completely different bits of your brain activating at the same time. That's really cool.
Yeah. Brain.
Interesting to get music from TikTok.
I don't get music. I don't go near TikTok, but I will find things that I'm like, oh, I've never heard this before. Why does this have 17 million views? And it'll be because it came via TikTok. So I think there's a whole explosion of music happening there first that then filters down to old people channels.
Yeah, those would be those would be the channels that I inhabit as well. Like I do get a lot of music off YouTube too. I can't stand it after 10 p.m. though when you get bombarded with adverts every like 2 minutes, and you actually can't even get through like a single track without having to skip an advert. It's horrible.
Ad blocker.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
I know. Yeah, but then you got to like turn it
Be a
off.
bad person.
Then you got to screw up the indie site you go on to. You know what it's like.
Look, I don't think anyone listening to this is going to have an ad blocker. Look, I'll show you. This episode is sponsored by... So on to the next question. Right, go on. Let's actually do the next question. What is the least enjoyable trope of fiction for you?
God, I don't want to say because I think any trope can be good. It's how it's handled. But in general, and this is pure irony because I've just written a book with this. It's that love through the sort of eons, and there's normally some old guy just lives for years and then keeps getting reborn until he finds his random young woman who's his old love reborn. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you come across that trope?
Okay.
Yes, we've had this one before, Ben.
Have we?
Yes, I can't remember what the term the other.
There is a term for it, but it's I don't mind it if it's done well, but it's very often not done well, and it feels a little bit weird and creepy sometimes. But I generally actually quite like tropes. I think tropes are great fun, and I like to take a trope and take it down to the water and bash its head in, in a loving way, in a very Nick Cave, Kylie Minogue kind of way.
It was Katrina Sylvie who said something very similar. I was trying to remember who it was, and I have.
Wonderful, well done.
See, it's not just me. This trope does exist.
Yes,
it's these immortal souls, and everybody, every generation, every year, they always find each other, and I just find like this concept of there's only one person for you through all these millions of centuries. Find each other. I find it quite tedious.
I often find myself when you're watching movies or reading books with this kind of thing in them, you've got to assume that at least one of the people is lying to themselves or the other person. Potentially both.
I've never touched anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's always been you, Johnny.
Yeah, exactly. Or they always have the same line that they always feed people. They're like, I think we were married in a previous life.
We were
I'd like
destined
to
to
pick
be. Oh yeah.
Oh God, what a horrible thing! Just meeting girls outside of a high school. Is that you?
Oh God.
Yeah.
I remember you were my darling Agatha.
It's like that thing where people have previous lives and they're always like priestesses or kings or something. It's like they were never like, oh, I was a laborer who died when I was 27 with rotten teeth.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember which comedian they have a bit about it. Then they met a whole society of people who said they were resurrected, and they all believed it was true, but there were two Napoleons.
So you got to fight to the death, the real one.
Oh, that sounds. That could have been
plot bit?
A Louis C.K. bit, maybe.
Oh, very possibly.
I don't know.
But actually, that's quite a fun idea for a plot. These two men both claim to be resurrected Napoleon.
They have to prove
it.
So
they force them to command a battle against each other.
Or like
the resurrectionist Hunger
Napoleon's life.
All 19 of these people claim to be.
Game show. Yeah, they've all got to be under a certain height. Have the big hat.
There's your next story.
Something. Your son was born healthy, but there is something we need to discuss. He was wearing an enormous hat.
He appears to be the Emperor of France.
Due to law. That's what he said.
And then you can tie it into the old trope and have him find his Josephine.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, of the two of them, it's definitely Josephine that's leading him on in that particular scenario, I think. Yeah. She was not constant.
Like, yeah, sure. I've been Toad's faith.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Said with so much shade, she was not constant. Right. I need to get this podcast back on track.
Sorry.
No, never apologise. This is great fun.
Oh wait, before we move on, the book that you've written that has your version of this trope in it. What's it called?
It's not out yet, but it's called Shadowskin. I'm still in first draft Hell. So
Is this going to be
yeah.
part 2 of
Well,
the Beggar Mage cycle?
yeah. So I love destroying tropes and I love destroying fairy tales. So Thief Mage is based on the Tinderbox, which I absolutely adore. It's one of my favorite fairy tales.
It's such a delightfully weird story, that the Tinderbox, isn't it? It's so odd with the dogs.
And I find it so weird because I thought it was like a fairly common and well-known fairy tale, but a lot of times I say the Tinderbox, and people literally do not know what I'm talking about.
Well, even if you start saying like dogs with the eyes of saucers.
Yeah, dogs with giant eyes and like, princess on the back of the dog. Nothing. And
Weird.
I wonder if it just never sort of went to America, perhaps.
Maybe.
Because I think it's a lot of times Americans don't know what I'm talking about, and they'll know like obviously Hans Heisen's more well-known stories, Little Mermaid, which even
Little Mermaid,
then they get horrendously wrong. Oh no, she lives happily after. No, she fucking doesn't. I'm like, what? Missing the whole point there. Yeah.
Spoilers.
He was not a happy camper, Hans Andersen. So yeah. So Tinderbox. But now when I started writing the second book, because I deviate so very much from the original story. The second book's just its own baby.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that goes well.
Especially
if you're in first draft hell,
no.
Go on. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I was going to say it's past first draft hell. It's in second draft hell. I'm lying.
It's in second draft. Wonderful. So you are at that stage where you are bringing out the luster of the diamond. Then.
No, there's another 7 circles to go.
I'd say you're working your way through Dante's 7 drafts. So, seeing as we're talking about it already, what is your writing process other than creating your own personal hell?
Word vomit, as we've discussed. Copious word vomit. Getting slightly stuck, going, oh, what if, and throwing a bunch of thoughts down, and then more word vomit, and then spending many drafts turning said word vomit into something resembling a story.
I have 2 questions about that. The first is, when you're just throwing down thoughts, do you do it inside the document that you're writing the book in, or do you have a separate space to do that in?
I actually I do sometimes do in a separate document, but I am very disorganized, and that way things get lost. So now I pretty much write everything in one. I literally just use Google Docs because I also forget to back things up. Yes. So I just write everything in one big Google Doc and then start making following Google Docs from that. But yeah, just throw stuff down. Have some notes in separate docs if necessary. And I don't plot things out. I don't outline. Yeah. But I do think people who read a lot as children and who started reading very young tend to have a better grasp of narrative structure without needing to outline. You still need to fix, obviously. Yeah, you still need to fix a lot because no draft is going to come out perfect. But you sort of have, not in an innate sense, but it's so ingrained in you from such a young age that your brain understands how story works.
I think that's actually a really fascinating point that I hadn't actually considered before in that way, because there is this innate grasp on the way that narrative structure should work, or the way that you want your narrative structure to work, maybe for that particular story. And I wonder whether it is connected to like very early literacy, because most of the people that we have on the podcast are obviously they're all writers, but also they're all avid readers, and they have been for their whole life. I don't think we've ever had someone on the podcast that's a writer that isn't like a really extreme reader. But some people definitely do. You have the plotters and the pantsers, don't you, which comes up quite a lot. So I wonder...
I don't really buy that, because I think everyone plots to an extent and everyone pantsers to an extent. It's just kind of like a Kinsey scale of plotting. But I say organic writer because I do go in and play around and write very organically. Plant a seed, see what happens. Just keep writing. Prune a lot, transplant.
Sort of the difference between like a sort of grow writer to like an engineer writer, that kind of.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the engineering side of things. I've tried to implement it because I went through a stage where I thought that's what real writers do. That would make me a better writer. And I just found it killed my desire to write. So if it works for you, great. It just didn't for me.
No, I'm far more in the first camp. I just sort of see where the wind takes me inside my own head, really.
Hope for the best.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to hope for the best. But unfortunately, sometimes you end up dashed on the rocks.
Yeah, but then you have to just accept that you are going to have to do revisions. That's it.
Yeah,
And once you accept that acceptance, then you can just write happily, knowing that you can fix it all later.
I quite like those moments. You know, you're reading back through something, you can say, I have at no point said anything about what these characters look like physically. And and it's because, well, I mean, I don't know if you guys get that. Like we said, I have a picture in my head of what they look like. So I'm like, oh, I don't need to describe them. And you get to the end and you go, no one else can see that. That's in my brain. And I think that again comes from this just sitting down and pouring the words out. So I don't need to write down that bit because that's there. I can see that.
Head
To write
novels.
down the rest. Yeah.
Head novels. Yeah.
Maybe I should just keep them to myself in my head.
Absolutely not. You're far too funny to not share it with people. The second question that I had, just before I forget it, was you mentioned earlier that you write in just through like pragmatic reasons. You write in like 20-minute bursts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like when you are working on a novel, do you have a daily word count that you try and hit?
No, I have a minimum, which is 100 words.
Just a simple 100 words.
Yeah, I'm like, as long as you've put down 100 words, the cogs keep moving. There's still motion, and also I like to think of it as having a very low goal makes it very hard for me to fail, and the fear of failure is often what stops me from writing. So if I say all you have to do is 100 words, then that's it. And even if that 100 words is me going, I literally do not know what to write right now. Let's describe this plant, then that's still 100 words. And very often I'll end up with at least 500 without trying.
Yeah.
Have you ever done NaNoWriMo?
Many, many years ago.
How did you find it?
Depressing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't work like that.
It's something of a slog, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it comes back to that fear of failure. If I'm panicking about failing something, I'm not enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get people having a great time doing it. And go for it. But if I feel like I have to write, what's it, like 2,700 words a day or something like that?
I think it
1,600?
It starts out something like 1,600, yeah. And if you miss a day, it
It's very quickly,
up.
yeah. I mean, if I've got that hanging over me for every day, and if I miss one day, it just gets worse. That's just that's too much negative stuff for me. Just give me my 100 words, and I'll be happy.
I like this this low baseline, and then whatever happens.
No, it's great. Everything's because you can't really do worse than 100. So you're always going to do better. So you always be like, yeah, not only did I meet my goal, I fucking surpassed it. I rock. And then you leave feeling great.
I wonder if that's a good, like, you could do like not like a competitor to NaNoWriMo, but you could sort of do like the alternate.
I did for a while. Well, I used to when I was trying to convince myself to write again. I did a hashtag give me 100, which is just me going, right, I'm going to write 100 words. Anyone wants to join me can join me. But I haven't done that in a while. No, just on Twitter. Just faffing about, going, right, going to make 100 words. If you're struggling to write 100 words. That's all you need to do.
Oh, those are really good answers to those. Thank you. That was so illuminating.
You're getting your hundreds down.
Yeah.
How do you know when the book you're writing is done?
When it's vaguely book shaped, you get to a point where it's like that's an ending, right? Okay. You get to a point you're like that story has told itself. Now to make it a bit more story shaped, and there's always gonna be places where some bits are lagging or maybe go too fast. Your pacing's off, and if you know yourself as a writer, you know where those are going to be. I know my endings tend to be rushed. I know my middles tend to be saggy. I know my beginnings tend to be saggy. And you can go back in and you go, I know I'm gonna have to sort that out, but just get it down, and then the general shape of a story is there. You've got a beginning, you've got a middle, you've got an end.
And when you have all that in place, and then you begin the editing process, and you're
Mhm.
7 edits deep and stuff, how do you know that you don't need an 8th edit?
You don't.
You just don't.
You can take any book off the shelf, off a any published book, and still edit it to make it
Right.
better. There just comes a point where you go, I'm done. I've had enough. Fuck it.
Yep.
I like that.
We've encountered this with every successful author we've ever spoken to. I think that there is a moment where you've just got to learn that occasionally you will reach a point with everything you write that you just have to say fuck it and go.
Sometimes you're just not a good enough writer to make it better. And, you know, maybe in 10 years' time, you'll look at that book and go, damn, I should have done this and this and this, but you're not there yet. So
That's isn't that what Neil Gaiman did with American Gods? He released what he saw was a subpar version because his publishers pressed him into it. And
okay.
I think it was like maybe 5-10 years later he released the absolute behemoth of a book that is American Gods now. I believe was a.
So now, which one did I read? I wonder.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think I read the first one because I remember thinking, well, if Neil Gaiman can write Mary Sue's, so can I. Sorry, I love Neil Gaiman. Please don't get me wrong. I just felt Shadow was very much, and now the plot makes Shadow do this, and now the plot makes Shadow do that. Very a reactive character.
Yeah, I don't think he'd begrudge you that because I think he's very overt with that. Shadow is like he is like the sort of bumbling innocent of that story, just sort of like treading on this bit of story and that bit of myth repeatedly.
I think maybe it's because it was repeatedly. I think if it had been done once or twice, it'd be like, okay, because no one just goes, yeah, I'm down. I'm hanging out with gods. This is fine. You know, there is that slow descent into, oh crap, is this my life now? But yeah, it's been many years since I've read it, so
there's a career that we would. I think we'd all take.
I do find there's a lot of anti Neil Gaiman sentiment.
Really?
And I sometimes wonder how much of that is professional jealousy.
Oh yeah, it's got to. I can't imagine it's anything else really. Like, I can also imagine people getting potentially a little bit aggy about his like fairly self-assured manner.
Yeah, but he's been doing this for how many years? Let the guy be self-assured.
Yeah, of course he should be confident. He's Neil fucking Gaiman.
Yeah. I think
also he is just a person. This is the other thing I don't get. It's like this hero worship. It's like, oh, he's done bad things. Like, what human fucking hasn't? Please tell me.
Yeah.
Like,
he's
not an actual Nazi, you know. You're all right there. He's just a guy who writes books.
That's your bar. Yeah. If they're not actual Nazis, then they're okay.
No, well, I like to go a bit higher than that, but you know,
it's very
some of the vitriol. You're like, calm down, people.
This is definitely because he's the other side of the Pratchett coin, right? They are two men linked by their work. They are one revered by everyone, and the other one apparently secretly despised. I think it's because they are so similar, and the literary world had to pick one. And if they didn't pick Terry, I'd be out there getting them all.
I was gonna say it's like no one speaks ill of the dead. So that pretty much leaves Neil.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Sorry, pal. I'm sure you're all right. You can live in your house and be happy with your millions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he's fine.
Scrooge McDuck style,
Weapon
swimming through coins. Yeah.
All them Coraline notes.
Yeah. I would give me his career. Thank you. I will take it. No problem. But yeah.
So
I'll leave it at that.
It's time for Nico's favorite question ever.
Oh, yes.
He gets to ask it every time we interview an author.
So, if you could adapt any book into any other medium, what book would it be? To what medium and why?
Wow, that is a terrible question.
Okay.
You genuinely offended him.
I am. I don't like this question. Oh wow. No, I'm stumped because nothing's gonna work for me. Sorry. I'll probably think of something in like 3 days' time.
You can totally use one of your own books if that would help.
Oh, I mean, yeah, put all my books into film and give me that hot Netflix cash.
Would you prefer it to be like them to be like Netflix, like long series, or
whichever is going to give me the most money? Let's be honest. Because once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. They're gonna either make it good or they're going to ruin it. but you as the author have very little say.
Well, you see, this is the question. You have total
I have
creative
total control. See, this would be a problem because I'm not a filmmaker, so now we know it's going to be shit.
Who's directing it? Me. Who's casting it? Also me.
Who's acting in it?
I'm also
All the
writing
parts
the
were played by me.
And they're like, it didn't do very well. Oh, it's a shock. No, okay. So there is a short story by Tanith Lee called, I think, Malice in Saffron. I'll have to look that up, but I think it's Malice in Saffron, which would probably make a terrible film, but I would like to see it because it's very dark and very twisted, and I love it.
Oh, that's an interesting answer. This idea of it actually wouldn't work, but you'd still like to see it. I like that.
I think it would be, if it was done by the right people, I think it could be a very lush kind of fantasy, but quite dark. So Sandman-ish, you know.
Afraid it's being done by you. We've established this, so.
But it's been done by me, so it's going to look like it was acted in the 80s by Michelle Pfeiffer wannabes.
Oh.
Ooh. So
I think it's going to come out more Lady Hawk than you know. Than
so
the
tell us
Sandman.
more about the story then by Tanith Lee.
So Malice in Saffron, it's about a girl who leaves her home for I think because her brother tries to rape her or her father. I can't remember. No, her father. And then has to leave home. Ends up joining a nunnery, killing nuns, becoming a nun, and also torturing her brother. That is a very rough synopsis because it's been years since I read it. But imagery-wise, I've absolutely loved it. Oh, and there's a lot of cross-dressing because Tanith Lee. Yeah,
I feel like Aubrey Plaza would be in this movie somewhere.
I don't know who that is.
She was she was in Parks and Rec and a few other things like that. She's
never seen Parks and Rec.
No, well, afterwards have a look at it. I suspect she would be excellent casting for this.
I just heard Aubrey Plaza and I wasn't sure if that was a person or a place. It's set in Aubrey Plaza with Aubrey Plaza playing characters.
Yeah. I like the sound of this though. I like this genderqueer nun murder.
Yeah, no, it's very murdery and very, very messed up. Oh, and then at the end she goes to feed her brother during a plague because she's now a nun. She's not really a nun, she's a fake nun. And she goes to fun times. She goes to actually I think to kill her brother, but he's dying of the plague, so she ends up feeding him her own arm.
Oh.
So I'd release this, right? But I'd release it as Sister Act 3.
With the musical.
Yeah. Because there's another fake nun story. This is completely doable.
Can we have Whoopi Goldberg playing the father?
Can we just have lots of dancing nuns murdered in wells? I've gotten the story completely wrong. Some Tanith Lee massive fan is sitting there right now, like carving my name into like a voodoo doll.
Their own arm.
Their own arm. Yeah. See me going, how you call yourself a fan?
So yeah, I think Nico's about to ask exactly what I'm about to ask, which is that
go on.
Where should people start reading your work? Like, what's the short story, the poem, the novel that they should start with?
So I would read a short story of mine because then you can decide whether you like my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a story called The Worm Bridge, spelled WORME, which won Short Story Day Africa 100 years ago, 5-6 years ago, maybe more.
Nice.
And that is, thank you, that is contemporary fantastical horror. So,
where can they find it?
That you can find online, but you just literally Google The Worm Bridge Cat Hellisen, it should bring up something. But otherwise, I've got stories that you can read online in Apex magazine, in Shimmer magazine, and if you want to buy magazine of fantasy and science fiction, I've got 2 stories in fantasy and science fiction, and I've got online Ceaseless Skies. I've got a short story that's online there. So those you can read free,
and then you can buy novels.
Decide, yeah. If you want to buy novels,
as the next step, they want to buy novels. Where did they find them?
Okay, so you can find most of my stuff on Amazon, but you can also find via the publishers or via bookshops. But this year, Luna Publishing, which are a Scottish press, released my book Cast Long Shadows, which is a very dark sort of retelling of Snow White.
So is this a running theme of like retelling fairy tales, like taking
Then
different?
it isn't. I've literally got like 2 that are retellings. My short
Oh,
stories have got
crikey, okay.
my short stories have got oh no, 3 if we're counting Peacekeeper, which isn't really a retelling and made people very angry because they thought it was and it wasn't. I just like to use fairy tales as like jumping off points and then just like completely rearrange them to suit myself.
I like that. When you say that it made people really angry, have you had to deal with quite a lot of sort of like blowback from
Oh
publishing?
no, no, not like that. So Beastkeeper was my novel that I wrote as a middle grade novel, which is not quite YA. So it was written to be for younger kids, but also for the parents who are reading it. So it was like a fairy tale on 2 levels, and it was submitted as my agent submitted it as a middle grade, and it was sold as a young YA, which to me made no sense because there was nothing young adult in it that would appeal to young adult readers. So a lot of people were like, "What?" It just missed its mark completely. And then because it was marketed for some reason as a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, which it was not, it was like a sequel. They were like, "This isn't Beauty and the Beast." I'm like, "No, shit, it isn't." Like, but you know, what can you do? It is what it is. Yeah.
Go out and hit them all with hammers.
Hit them all with hammer. No, rocks. Rocks. We've discussed this. Rocks down by the river.
Go
yeah.
and turn them all puce.
Oh, there we go. Every time it makes me a little shudder. So
to say, if they want something that's recent, my most recent book is Thief Mage, Big Mage, which is like literally just came out 2 weeks ago.
And they'll be getting in on the ground floor there, won't they? Because it's the start of the Beggar Mage cycle.
Yeah, and then they can be like, "Oh, yeah, this is amazing. I'm gonna go buy all their other books now."
You have to be careful not to pull a George Martin though, and like leave people waiting too long for the next book.
Nah, we won't get there. Don't worry.
We won't get there because it has been a while for George.
He does not meet 100
George is doing his own things. Yeah.
Can you imagine what the world would look like if George Martin wrote 100 words a day? It would be a very different place.
He'd have finished it by now. Sorry.
Maybe.
Well, potentially, you never know.
I would like to say to everyone, if you can, try and find your books from publishers or from a nice local bookshop, because it's always good to support them, and there aren't enough of them anymore. So,
exactly,
when you're getting something lovely by Cat, go and get it straight from the publisher.
But also, no judge wherever you get it from, because sometimes people just find it easier to get certain places. So, I certainly won't judge you. But yeah, if you can go for bookshops, definitely do so.
So you can actually, if you go to Cat's website, which is cathellisen.technosiren.blog,
which hasn't been updated in a while. Sorry.
It hasn't been updated in a while, but I did notice earlier when I checked that there are multiple links of various different places to buy each book. So although it doesn't have the more recent books, it does have.
No, that's what I say, because I'm lazy.
It's right. It's still got tons of books and links to where some short stories are free to read and this kind of thing. So
yes, thank you. Thanks for reminding me to do some work. I appreciate it. I
always like to do that at the end of a podcast,
Yeah.
But can people follow you on social media? Do you tweet?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter mainly. So you can find me. I'll be at CL Hellisen, I think. I'll have to check myself quickly. CL_Hellisen.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's
right.
me.
Well, you can definitely check out Cat in all those places. It's been phenomenal talking to you, Cat. It's been
thank you. It's been so much fun. I really enjoyed your stories, both of them. I thought they were excellent.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Yours has really left a mark on me. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. Although not as much of a mark as that flensing of the
Mark.
That character. Yeah, Mark 1. Oh no, I'm just broken.
That welt on you, Ben. What colour would you say it is?
It's puce.
Right, get out of here, you moist puce bastards.
Oh, Grim. Thank you. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?